This podcast is about so many aspects of life, and life is messy. Adult language and themes ahead. Listener discretion is advised.
Somebody tell me who gon' have my back? Who needed help? Couldn't find it. Said you would, but was.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep your arms and legs inside the car at all times, because we're going there. Taboo topics are back on the table.
Hey, I'm Jo.
I am LeJon.
And I'm Matt, and welcome back to the Going There podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that a lot of Americans struggle with, which is addiction, and also the recovery side of it. We're in a culture right now where it's cool and trendy if you're famous or you're rich. People are more willing to accept that path and those events. But for the rest of America, the other 99% of us, it's a taboo. And here to share his experiences is our friend and colleague, Mr. Luke Frazier. Luke, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt, LeJon, and Jo. It's nice to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So, Luke, before we roll up our sleeves and dig in here, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your background and kind of what brought you into my circle of people?
Matt, it actually is a really interesting story how you and I met. It was around a time that I was looking to do some real more passion type projects in video work. And so I was looking around for some colleagues, some co-producers, some partners to do this, collaborators. And I got your name again through someone that I had never met before and met in a really crazy, funky way. And the short version of that is...
a men's restroom at a gas station.
Yes. It was at a truck stop, actually. So Nat Bauman.
Was your Uber driver?
No, she was the Uber driver of someone that I had dinner with who started talking about someone who was in video production. Did I know her?
Did anybody follow that? Raise your hand.
I got some of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
we heard Uber driver dinner.
That's all you
Perfect.
can know. It was.
I'm gonna try to be less pragmatic, more optimistic. There are times in our lives where things seem to happen out of serendipity.
There you go.
And that's what there's been a lot of that going on.
That's 2020 altogether.
This podcast for us has kind of been just like showered with kismet.
Serendipsticks.
Serendipsticks.
So, Luke, what's your background? Because I didn't find out until later on that you actually have a Juris Doctorate.
I do.
I went to law school.
What kind of shit?
Well, you have a psychology degree, and you never talk about that.
Well, yeah.
So
for multiple reasons.
It's interesting. One of the ways that I've grown over time, and I think all of us try to, is to consider ourselves a lot more than what we do. But for the longest time, it was all about what I did. So I had a degree in social work and did some social work. But if we get into the story of my addiction a little bit more later, it had to do with compensating. Like I wanted to be a social worker so I could tell you or show you I was a good person, when really I was a liar, cheat, and thief.
Just like me.
So it was
like your form of like false atonement. Is that what it is?
Or just fronting, like being something on the outside and being something different on the inside. My first higher power was what you thought of me. Okay, so you give over to others what you are about by letting them judge you. Understanding or trying to figure out how they judged you. Went in and out of the broadcasting field for a while, including doing public radio reporting and different kind of producing, and then went back out and did some like nonprofit work again, trying to compensate once more for how shitty I felt inside and how I could show you that I wasn't a shithead.
And why were you feeling shitty?
Well, just the things I was doing, lying, cheating, doing things that...
Like about drinking
and
about
doing
drinking. Drugs, or about like stealing VCRs?
Well, VCRs, for those who don't know, who are in the audience, there used to be VHS tapes. Yeah, it was all that stuff, Jo. It was just kind of behavior. It was all negative behavior, manipulative, taking advantage of people. If you weren't going to take advantage of me, I certainly was going to take advantage of you. And so it was all that stuff. And sure, the drugs and alcohol were just part and parcel and symptomatic of the deeper issues that I was facing. And so Basically, my background has been varied. I think the through line is always communications, whether it was with other people or with, an audience. I've done in front of camera work. I've done, the producing side of it, in front of the microphone, just kind of all over the place with that. But again, the idea is that I've always stretched in a way to communicate one idea or another.
It's because I've been where to an extent where you were. And there was a point in my life where I just hated LeJon Woods. I couldn't stand myself. But it took years after for me to understand that I didn't like that guy years prior. Did you know that you were a piece of shit while you were a piece of shit?
At times, yes. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to ignore when you're lying to someone's face again and again and again and doing those things that you weren't raised to do. That my parents, who were good Kennedy liberals and good churchgoers, although the family in many ways got very dysfunctional.
Like a good Kennedy liberal.
Like a good Kennedy, I'm the ninth kid, which is called, of course, Irish birth control is called menopause. And that's, so they ran out of time when I was there, number 9. Wow. So, yeah, and actually in the program, there's something called the CIA, being a member of the Catholic Irish Alcoholic Club. So I'm a member of that as well. So, yeah, LeJon, to go back to your question, it's the idea that how long can you fool yourself and how long can you be in denial? I mean, Matt, you and I had some conversations, of course, over time in the past, year or more that we've known each other. And I remember you talking about, this kind of how do you fool yourself? How do you kind of bury what you're feeling or maybe what you've grown up around and have to consider that to be part of your identity?
It's work we all have to do. And I think what separates the people who are able to eventually go to bed and put their head on the pillow with a clean conscience are the ones who finally have that self-reckoning and the ones who fight it off until, they're on their deathbed instead of, just a night's sleep.
Yeah, the bitter end, the whole unholy trinity of rationalization, minimalization, and justification. I rationalized coming down here because Matt was my friend. I minimized the importance of it because it's just a fucking podcast. And then I justified being here because I really didn't have anything else to do for the next hour.
This is Just a Fucking Podcast with LeJon, Jo, and Matt.
So let me just go back to when you, quote unquote, were an asshole. No.
I didn't say asshole,
sorry,
Joe.
Piece of shit.
Thank you.
But you're talking about yourself when you were still drinking and using drugs, calling yourself a piece of shit, but that seems possibly problematic. Do you think that your actions were, piece of shittery status, or that, because a lot of people say that alcoholism is a disease and it's a physical allergy almost.
If I understood you correctly, and this is just how I perceived it, that's interesting. That's what you heard. What I heard was due to a lot of things, not just the alcohol and the drugs and stuff, you were just making bad choices.
Yeah, why don't you guys just pick me apart and analyze me and talk about me, and then I can just join in later.
So
with LeJon and I will go have a cup of coffee.
You must have not gotten a lot of attention as the ninth kid.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. That's funny, actually, Joe, because recently I've been doing some deeper work with ego and where my ego mania comes from. And we joked, I'm not sure if we were on the air yet, but this idea of being an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. Talk about a paradox that I can tell you how great I am, but inside maybe I'm not feeling very good at all. And that gets very twisted up with the fact that sometimes I actually do and did back then really good things. This sense of an obsession that's triggered by my physical allergy. And that also, the allergy thing also doesn't mean that once I start drinking, I can't stop till I'm passed out. Some alcoholics, that is their thing that happens. For me, I could binge drink. I could drink for a while, then not drink. I could drink for a weekend straight and then take some time off. But context also played into that because I was married at the time and, she wasn't in love with my drinking. And after a while, I wasn't in love with her anymore.
For respect of this person, I have somebody who's in my close circle of people who, when they would not drink for a few weeks, the other people around would go, see, everything's better. And I'd say, alcoholism isn't just this one shape or mold where it's like, no, they can't not drink a single day. It's there's still the addiction there. There's still the disease underlying, and it's the people on the outside who just want it to be a good thing. They're like, yeah, it's great.
Well, that's part of the alcoholic or addictive system too. How others treat us and how they get involved with our own disease. And there's groups for that. I got to believe that it's not going to be too far away from your personal family that someone who's struggling with drugs and alcohol. Friend, family.
I think we all know high functioning addicts, people who refuse to admit that they suffer from it.
Yeah, or even with the parameters that they see, like what the definition of an alcoholic or a drug addict is.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't fall into that like myopic category, they feel like they're fine. And
I wasn't under the bridge.
Yeah.
I was never under the bridge. I never lost it. Well, I lost one job due to my use, but yeah, you start defining it in the narrow terms like that, and you can take yourself out of any category.
Yeah. And
not just that.
It's also hard because alcohol is such a social, it's accepted. It's so widely accepted in our culture, and fitting in is also important in our culture. That makes it tough to know that you have an issue and then also want to make yourself better, but then you're risking like losing people or being ostracized.
Yeah. Well, look, I come out of the 12-step tradition mostly, and we talk about powerlessness and unmanageability. So I knew I was powerless over alcohol and drugs for a long time. I knew that people didn't drink like me when I was 18, 20, whatever. People did not, except the people I sought out that I could drink with that way.
Oh, yeah.
But the other half of that is unmanageability, and I could deny being unmanageable. I have a job. I bought a house. I did all these things. I got money in the bank. So I can't be that.
I had a family member who was under a cocaine addiction, okay? And they would ask me for money here and there and everything, and I knew exactly where that money was going. But to see my family member happy, it's like, damn it. I know this $20 is going towards something that I don't want them to do. But at the same time, I know temporarily, I don't care if it's for a half hour, they're going to be happy. Did you have people or a person like that?
That's an interesting question. It depends how you define happiness. People want you on the outside to look like you're enjoying life. I mean, we all want, I think, the people we care about to be enjoying life, to find life meaningful, to find life enjoyable. I guess I'm rejecting the word fun, because if people knew that I was going to take drugs and alcohol to excess, I'm not sure they would say that I was having fun. The effect of it might be fun. And that's another maybe misconception, is that I had a lot of fun drinking and using. I did. I mean, I don't mind admitting that.
I'm curious to see what people's views on all of this stuff are, so we can kind of pour out first, and you don't have to take the scary walk down the plank by yourself.
I'm not scared.
I understand. You're here.
Really
Just
not.
wait.
We're here to go there. I have somebody in my life who it's not a one defined addiction. There are lots of problems. There is the mental allergy. There's the physical ailment. There is dependency. There is the wanting to numb things. And LeJon, to me, the classic enablers aren't the people who are saying, go out and keep doing this. They're the people who aren't willing to do the hard work, because it's like, well, I can't cut this person off, or I can't tell them I won't do this. And it was so frustrating with me fighting and arguing with the people who were close to me in this situation, saying, showing love for this person is not making sure that they're happy, is not making sure that they have a smile on their face. It's going to be tough. Like, it's going to get way worse before it gets better. I'm not saying like, come on, just do it. There's some people who are not able because of that relationship, because it feels like I'm not showing you love. I've never been somebody who has been attracted to drug use. I can count probably on one hand how many times I've smoked weed in my life. It just does nothing for me. I will be the first to admit I love me my drinks, but the older I get, it's never been a need. It's always been a kind of like, I enjoy it, but in social situations. I'm not somebody who sits around and drinks by myself.
I actually find it, and my mother and my father passed my senior year at high school, but they found it very impressive My mom still does that. I am not like swimming in alcohol on a daily basis, and the fact that I actually do it. One, because both my mom and my dad were big time alcoholics, and before my dad passed, I think he was 45 plus years in AA, and my mother at this point, maybe I want to get this wrong, long time in AA. Okay, so and for me, I can take it or leave it. I can drink my ass off and everything. I have a beer gerator in my house. It's just for beer. Okay. And there are beers in there that I probably bought in August that, they're just in there. And when I feel like drinking them, I will,
Fucking amateur.
Jesus. Exactly right. Thank you.
Well, but there's a good manipulation trick that you hear all kinds of things in meetings. But one of them was this guy kept talking about keeping this box of wine in his fridge, and constantly, because his wife wasn't a wine drinker, he'd empty it, fill it back up again, empty it, and be like, "The same box is in there, honey. I mean, what do you care about? I mean, how are you making a big deal out of this when you'd be dead drunk, but the box was still the same?"
He's like, I'm drunk on Jesus. High on life.
She's like, he just keeps reproducing the same wine. How?
Oh, okay, that's where that was. I'm sorry. I thought that was something else.
John, what about drugs?
Oh, listen, I made it my business to sample each drug possible. I had a roommate in my first year of college who taught me a lot about drugs because he was deep into it as far as using them and I don't know if he was selling them or not, but judging by his shoes, I think he was selling them. But yeah, so I've done the coke, I've done the weed and everything, and never got hooked on it. It was always just take it or leave it. And as I'm sitting there saying it to myself, it's like, did I not get hooked on it, or did I just somehow stop because of something else? But no, again, it's been drugs and alcohol have been taking and leaving my whole life.
Joe, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know, because I feel like if you talked to me and convinced me, maybe I would be like, yeah, I guess I am an alcoholic or a drug addict, but I don't drink all the time.
You're
but
far
when I
too
do
much
drink,
of a lightweight to be an alcoholic.
I was going to say, when I drink, I want to like really be a part of the group. So I probably will drink. I know that I drink more than I should. And there have been times where I've been with people who can drink me under the table, but I will still be drinking. Also at UCB, we didn't get paid in money, but we got paid in drinks. So even if I didn't want to drink, I was like, well, I'm losing money not drinking. And then, I just want to have a good time and have fun.
What's UCB?
Sorry, that's Upright Citizens Brigade. It's an improv theater.
Okay.
Also, I do love weed. I love weed, and I will smoke it every day. I'm a huge proponent, and I'm also a huge proponent of hallucinogens. I think that they are great for you, and I do think that so I guess I'm not like ready to admit that I want to go to rehab or something.
Wow.
I know people I could take two people who both smoke the same amount of weed. One of them does it to bring down their anxiety. Somebody on the other side went from being this high functioning, like really smart person to having no desires, no goals, and no purpose in life. And so the same drug, quote unquote, I'm saying with air quotes, the same drug, same usage, two very different outcomes. I think it's all very contextual. But Luke, let's get into your story. How did you kind of get hooked, and where did it take you?
There was a lot of mental illness and addiction up and down my family. Some people say, well, it runs in my family. In my family, it's sprinted, like Olympic speed, it's sprinted. So, the generational stuff. So it was always like a part of the vibe and the context. My siblings were very much in the hippie thing, and there would, be all that kind of stuff around. And then because of the mental illness and losing some siblings who died, I wanted to get away from how I felt. I couldn't stand it. I was hurting. I was a hurting pup.
Where like timeline wise, where are we
15,
at right now?
16.
Okay.
So 8th grade, started to use it weekends, doing more and more, discovering pot. 9th grade, into high school. College comes, all bets are off, drinking and smoking pretty much daily when I could. Hallucinogens, other kinds of things. So
did your family, siblings, friends, I mean, your friends were probably doing it with you, but
yeah, you find the people.
Were there people around you who were concerned, who raised concern?
Well, it's funny. youngest of 9, my parents were pretty much worn out by the time that I was starting to do this.
They
were. I mean,
that's a
they
thing.
They had lost 2 kids.
Yeah.
They had, struggled with helping other kids through mental illness. It was like, hold your breath, cross your fingers, and hope that Luke and my sister closest in age, Felicity, were okay. And I could be okay. I graduated high school in 3 years. So, that outside stuff, that's what it keeps coming down to, is the outside stuff was fine. I was achieving. I was known to be smart and personable and charming.
Why question it? Like so many lawyers and these people, it's like, hey man, he's just getting through. It's like, you got to cram.
I mean, I went through law school. I went through law school drunk all the time. And that was, again, something I could do.
In all seriousness,
and
that actually is kind of impressive.
Because that's 7 years, right?
I'm by no means condoning it, but that's pretty goddamn impressive.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, and let's see, and having a disintegrating marriage and having a kid and being completely out of control, stealing from my employer. And I could just look good on the outside. And this isn't about patting myself on the back. In fact, it should be a cautionary tale that just because you can achieve and continue to get good grades, that's what it is. It's this dichotomy, we're really good actors, we're really good. And that, here's the other thing. I don't like addicts and alcoholics to take all the credit for we're like this and we're the ones who are manipulative. You could be straight ass person and still be manipulative, dishonest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to take credit or take alcoholics sometimes in the room. So like, it's because we're alcoholics. No, you might not drink at all and still be an asshole.
I mean, it also sounds like, I feel like a lot of people who share their stories had traumatic experiences and they did want to escape.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's a mental health thing too. I don't think that mental health I think it's very stigmatized, mental health here, as well as alcohol and drug addiction. So if you are functioning or, if you look good on the outside, we're certainly not going to label that as an addiction problem because that looks bad.
No, the intersection with mental health is very, very strong, but you can also disguise it too. I mean, you could be getting treated for mental health like I was, and my psychiatrist would say, you drinking it all, Luke? I have a couple glasses. And that's always what the cops hear too. I talk to cops and they're always saying, when they pull someone over and they're drunk as shit and they're like, did you have anything to drink tonight, sir? Yeah, I had 2 beers.
Yeah.
We've all been that person before. And in our minds, we're going, this cop is going to appreciate my honesty. Because if I say none, they're going to call bullshit and arrest me. If I say I drink a bunch, I just turned on myself. But if I say I had 2 beers, they're like, this young fellow's okay in our book.
Go get him. You be careful out there.
All right, this is good stuff. All right, everybody, we're going to take ourselves a quick musical break. You are listening to the sounds of Alomod. Yes, indeed, a Cleveland, Ohio rap artist, musical artist who is doing some big things out here and is trying to reach the next level, and we're going to help him do that. So please enjoy the sounds of Teamwork, Brick, and Dead throughout this episode from Alomod. Yes, indeed.
Poverty, drug dealers and killers, the jungle, lion, snakes, gorillas, the home of Steve Harvey and Bone Thugs. You not with the Cavs, then Kevin get no love. Got the Glock 23, LeBron James, J.R. Smith and Wesson shooting from long range. When the trunk pop, you know it's about to go down. Somebody finna take an L like they played with the Browns. He on the ground begging them please while dude is standing over him, ready to squeeze. He said, because of you, my cousin no longer breathe. And start spraying the cannon like it's fucking Febreze.
So in the early 2000s, you decided to try to get sober.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not one event.
No, I mean, it was knowing people who were in the program, so I knew about AA. I knew about addiction. Again, I mentioned my family up and down. So it was finally had become, you get hollowed out, really. You lose a big part of your soul. You get really, and that's probably where my bottom was realizing that, there wasn't nothing left inside. And that's different than the bridge and, the things that look different from the outside. So I just got sick and tired, being sick and tired. And were there outside influences? Yeah, I mentioned my marriage was disintegrating. I didn't really want to rescue it, but I kind of felt like I should try a little bit. And then, I ended up saying, okay, I'll try treatment, because I had been, actually there was, I ended up in the hospital in a dual diagnosis unit, mental health and drug abuse.
Were you pretty much using whatever you could get your hands on, or did you have your bag
my
of
favorites?
favorites?
I mean, so it was booze by the end, pretty much. There was a wake up call. There was an accident. I had gone to, here's the last drink. My wife was out of town, drank real heavy the night before. I was unemployed, got up. There was only like 3 beers in the fridge and some, maybe a finger of vodka in the little bottle. So I polished that off and I said, I got to get some more. So I take my dogs to the park because I'm a good, responsible pet owner. Then I go to the store, I got my, like a 12-pack, a bottle of vodka, and I used to drive and, drink and drive. I'm a felon, I'm just not convicted, because the amount of times I drank and drove was just beyond count almost.
We'd all be liars if we said we'd never done it.
It's amazing. Since I got sober, I have not been arrested for drunk driving. It's just amazing. But
I wonder what the correlation is.
so anyway, so I'm leaving, getting my nice little lunch and my booze, and I make a left-hand turn, miscalculated how the other car was coming up the street. I made it against traffic, and they smashed into the back of my car. So my first thought was, I got to get rid of this beer before the cops come. And the woman in the other car was injured slightly, thank God. But my dog,
because she deserved it.
Slightly injured.
Oh my God, you guys. Oh my God. See, usually like when I'm telling this story, people are like really, yeah, but not you guys.
Not here, sir.
You told us, don't have pity for me. Let's not take this too seriously.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna get you now, because actually the dog was in the back of my car, was killed in the impact.
Whoa.
See, told you. You guys can handle that.
Damn it,
Come on,
man.
there you go.
Damn.
Huh?
That's why I didn't say anything.
No, so that was certainly a.
What kind of dog was it?
It was a hound
no.
mix.
Don't answer
Her
that.
name was Sophie.
Oh.
Sophie's
See you guys
choice.
next week.
No, so it was her choice. Did you say Sophie's choice?
I said Sophie's choice.
Thank you. Yeah, it was like Sophie's choice, because I could drink and know that I was risking life and limb, myself and others and my dog, or I could. It was an impossible choice not to drink, and that's where I ended up that day. So give me a second. I got sober in September 2005. So this was earlier, and this was the end of August 2005.
So more than 15 years ago,
Yeah.
as of the time of recording this. So that's an awesome
Congratulations.
achievement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very well done.
But so you're in this horrible situation, and you think, my dog died in this car wreck. This person's injured, but I have to get rid of this beer.
Yeah, exactly. And I got out of the car and I shoved it in the gas station trash can, and then got back in my car. At that time, I didn't know the dog had died. But that sparked 7 words in my head. It doesn't have to be this way. And that was the real reckoning, because part of what I think drug addiction is a lack of imagination. It's a failure of imagining a life different than you currently have or think that you're going to have. And you can't imagine something different. So that gave me a real, but being totally honest, part of then when I went into treatment from there, it was to get out of the jackpot of just having had an accident, my dog being killed, and my wife finally saying that's pretty much it. Or us finally deciding that was it, or at least me deciding it was. So, I go into treatment, and there's something real funny about that door slamming shut behind you and you can't leave. The door's locked, and there you go.
So it's like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Another great movie, Ken Kesey, The Book is Better. It's narrated by Chief, the Native American guy. Have you read that?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing
Yeah.
book.
Are you serious?
Amazing. Yeah, it's narrated by, in the voice of Chief. But so, then I decided to take it seriously. I mean, we talk about moments of grace. We talk about, a spiritual awakening. There's lots of things that you can point to. But where I was pointed to was that it doesn't have to be this way. So I ended up going to treatment. It broke down the barriers of my denial of unmanageability, because your life is unmanageable if you end up in a place like that.
All right.
Right.
You can't pretend that just because you have the job or you do this and that, you're okay.
did you have the support that you knew you needed, or were you your best support?
So I had siblings. I had friends who were there for me. I knew a couple of people who already were in AA. I had a counselor in treatment who was wonderful. He fooled me the first few nights, and I said, I'm getting out of here. Because, again, I wasn't court ordered. And he said, just give it one more day.
And I'm certain that you've mentally thought about, the times that you went through that process and everything, how things would have been if you didn't have that kind of support. And, and if you would have made it or not. And where would you be?
Well, that's exactly. And you guys, I'm interested in you guys talking about this too. When you have that support of people and how it can change your whole attitude and outlook on life, you're no longer isolated. And, tell me, Matt, you said you talked about this sugar and this kind of caffeine thing. Do you have someone that you can talk to about that? If you get concerned about it, do you talk to Lindsay about it? Do you say, man, I've really been off the rails with this sugar?
Lindsay's not trying to hear that shit.
She's got other things to do.
Lindsay, I throw her under the bus in almost every podcast. We're talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Lindsay's kind of like my nurse Ratchet who lives at home and is always like, Matt, you had too much sugar today. As I'm on like my 16th lap around the couch, I'm like, no, I haven't. Sugar is one thing. The fact that I think you had people who you had not pushed out of your life or they had not left your life who were not addicts themselves, I'm assuming at least some of them. A lot of times it's on one side, you have the enablers, and on the other side, the people who just can't take it anymore. And it's like, call me when you're clean. The fact that you had people who were in the middle.
Yeah, but I will say all of my relationships are fractured. Not one of them, especially with my family, was where it is today. I have beautiful relationships today with all my remaining siblings. And that's a function of being sober. That's a function of being in recovery.
You kind of grazed it. What is recovery? What really is recovery?
I think recovery is adopting a new way of living, a new design for living, where you are authentic, you are honest, you're willing to be, you're open-minded, you have a sense of ease and comfort about yourself and your place in the world. But besides that, recovery is a celebration. For me, I am much more able to do the things I always wanted to do, whether it's through art or music or creativity, whatever it is. Now I can embrace that. Whereas before it was, maybe I'll do that sometime. Maybe that's a good idea. It's freeing. It's freeing.
That's interesting to me that you feel like you're less inhibited like performing art or doing art, because I feel like so many artists and performers are fueled by alcohol and drugs, and there's always this pressure to be good. So if that's your edge, you're going to keep doing it. But it almost seems like the actual edge is being comfortable with yourself.
Yes. That I have an ability to meet anyone at any time and be okay.
It sounds like you at least had some form of interaction with AA.
I'm a sober member of AA.
Okay, so
right today, yeah.
And so for our listeners, AA was actually started in Akron, Ohio, which we are just right outside of it. I grew up in Cuyahoga Falls, which is right next door to Akron. Obviously, the most well-known kind of like recovery that's out there to this day. And this isn't from a place of judgment. I'm curious to know your understanding of it. The entire thing is built around, first and foremost, you have to accept a higher power. And do you see that as problematic?
You have to admit you're powerless and then find a power greater than yourself. Whether that's the group, whether that's God, whether that's Allah, whether that's Buddha, whatever it might be, you're not God. Okay, you ain't it.
So you don't have to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior?
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
I haven't gone through it, so I'm
sorry.
legitimately asking.
I thought you were joking about that one. No, absolutely not. Now, AA was started by white men, actually pretty successful white men, although Bill Wilson had made and lost many fortunes due to alcohol, stock market and where else. But then there was the Dr. Bob, and there was different people of great stature who first started AA. So their God tended to be more of a Christian, Judeo-Christian tradition. But no, nowhere in the big book does it. In fact, there's two places. If the 12 steps are principles and you live by them and you do certain actions based on those 12 steps, the only two things that are underlined in those 12 steps are God as you understand him. Now, the him can be problematic. It's 1939. It's the power that you decide, you can rely on. And it's the paradox. You admit your powerlessness in order to gain strength. You talk about being unable to control something so that you can be in a different place. You talk about, having a sense of desperation so that you can have hope.
That seems how forgiveness works, right? If you forgive your own faults, first you have to admit them.
Yeah, right.
And that's why it's called steps.
Yeah.
As in, you can't possibly get to this point of kind of self-awareness and realization without first admitting that where you're at right now ain't working.
Right. It starts within the self. Right.
That's right. And I think that the love that's shared among those who've gone through the experience, and you've talked about that, Matt, that we have certain ways that you can relate to people that you've gone through, I was in, war with that person, and I was in this, flood with that person, whatever it might be. Well, I was in hell with a lot of people, whether I was physically there with them or not. It's amazing to me. I've gone to AA meetings around the globe, and it's amazing to me how in any language, any person, the stories remain the same. We have kind of typical stories in strange lands because the world of alcoholism and drug addiction is strange. Doesn't make sense for people who haven't been part of it. I don't think it doesn't make sense that you would leave your kid in the car seat and go in the bar and drink. So these things that don't make sense, but I can tell you many an alcoholic who did just that. Yeah. And so the experiences are shared despite there being, differences on the surface.
If it's Luke in October of 2019, because I'm certain a lot of people are going through this, unfortunately. Luke in 2019 just decided to start this path. And then COVID hits, the pandemic hits.
Yeah.
And you're physically in 2019 in October in a location with other people. You're sharing your stories and everything. You're feeling empowered and whatnot. Bam, pandemic.
Yeah.
Does Luke survive it?
That's a great question. I mean, some people I know, I've complained profusely about Zoom meetings because you don't get the connection. You don't get to hug people. You don't get to be right next to them. You don't get to laugh the same way when you're not sitting in the same room. So I'm being a whiny bitch about Zoom at one meeting, and someone said, I love Zoom meetings. I got sober in March.
Wow.
Okay, so they don't know anything but Zoom meetings. Right. And so I was like, oh boy, there you go. Focusing on yourself. Matt talked about it. The negation of self, principles and practices, it's about getting away out of self and leaning towards others. So there I was, totally just worried about, I don't like Zoom. I don't like it as much. And this person said, I love it. I've gotten sober. This is the greatest thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a good story. And then the 17 other people who went out and drank because they hated Zoom.
Well,
1 in 17, Matt.
Yeah, I guess there are just many ways to, like you said, many paths to recovery. I have a question. We talked about hallucinogens and about how they are a drug, but there have been a lot of studies where they are good with treating addiction as well as mental illness. Do you have any specific thoughts on those?
Well, you're probably referring to the past couple of years. There was even a pretty major work of research that came out, Harvard and whatever.
And have you read the Michael Pollan book?
I have, and I got it out of the library and skimmed it. Yeah, I'm going to admit it, Joe. But no, I read the book review, and then I said, I got to get this. But then
it was a long book review. Yeah.
Look, I don't know for other people. For me, hallucinogens were about negating my experience and getting out of my experience. I enjoyed hallucinogens a lot. And I don't know that I would use them today as a therapeutic, but I know there's people that are having great success with that. But it's controlled, done in controlled circumstances. From what I understand, people will be given hallucinogens and then be in a room with a support person,
right,
like a coach or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it's not cut with speed or whatever other things it was.
Okay, so Joe, you're actually the one who told us to watch the animated
Midnight Gospel.
So Midnight Gospel. So I watched the first episode and had Dr. Drew in it, and they're talking about it. And essentially what he was saying, because they were like, you're taking these bad things. He goes, well, the chemicals aren't bad things. Let's get away from saying that. And I think when it comes to drugs, it's the manufacturing process and where they lace it with stuff versus it kind of in its natural form. And, I'm not going to sit here and say alcohol or drugs are good or bad, but they certainly impact people differently.
Yeah. Well, what are you using peyote for? People use peyote and psilocybin mushrooms as examples.
To be a good mom.
These are natural. Just to get, to be a good mom or to get through your day. To be a good mom or to, break up relationships. What's your intention? What's your motive? And
finish the laundry.
Why are you? If only I could have more cocaine.
I
could
folded
get
it
this
really
house
weird.
Clean. Yeah, I could get this house clean.
Joe, you did origami with the underwear again. Knock it off.
So it's
that should be celebrated. Yeah.
Some of it's why are you doing it, and what are you hoping to get out of it?
But there's things that are hip. And there are things that are like, oh my God. And then there are things that really are, like we've seen the heroin epidemic, talking to people who work in the hospitals, people who, that's not in your life. You don't realize how bad it is. The stigma of it, though, it's funny because when Luke told me that he is a recovering alcoholic or drug user, it was so nonchalant because he goes, hey man, why don't we have, my wife and I should have you and your wife over for a cookout one of these days. I go, well, let us bring something. Let me bring a bottle of wine or something. And I kept trying to offer booze because in my family, that's what you do. You get together, you're drinking. We can't put up with each other sober. He was very nonchalantly, oh, actually, no, I don't drink. I don't mind telling you I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug user. And I'm like, so I'll bring some cookies.
Right.
But again, with our relationship and personalities, it just kind of flowed into the next topic.
And you have to know for yourself what your tolerance is for being in a bar or going to hear music in a bar or whatever. You keep saying recovered alcoholic. There's some of those in AA who would, shoot you down immediately.
I understand. It's like saying ex-Marine. There is no such thing as an ex-Marine.
Okay.
You die a Marine.
Yeah, they get really pissed about that.
The further dimension of that, recovering because it's a daily thing versus recovered. There is a part of our literature that talks about, I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Sure. And that's the truth. I have recovered from this hopeless state of mind and body. I'm in recovery and recovering from drug and alcohol because I could pick up a drink tonight.
We've seen, sadly, a lot of people do that during 2020.
Exactly.
So let's just, if we can, put it under the umbrella of therapy. There is no one size fits all. I've talked to people who say they tried hypnotherapy and it was everything in the world. And there are people who, used essentially like mysticism and forms of religion.
There's a Buddhist recovery.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's okay that there's not a one size fits all. I think if there's not a little bit of custom tailoring to it.
Except if, and I've experienced this with people that I've known in the program, if they are so concerned about what other people would think of them, if they knew it, then there's a certain level of fear that continues into the program. And they're holding on so tight to the fact that no one can find out I'm an addict or an alcoholic. Now, there might be some good reasons for that. If a medical license, for instance, or something where it would affect them professionally. But the point is that once you accept who and what you are, then I don't really need to care what you think of me because of that.
Somebody out there listening to this right now, whether or not they're fully self-aware, but they know they're 1990s Luke. What can you say to them? What hope can you give them and what advice can you give them? What is the first thing that they should do?
I would say that if you're worried about the kind of use, the kind of drinking, the kind of drugging that you're doing, if you're worried about it, if others have talked about being worried about it, that you trust and that know you and love you, then your first step is to take an inventory. There's all kinds of things I'm sure online you can talk about, or you can find things that are, here's some questions to ask yourself. Do you drink alone because you don't want other people to know you're drinking? Has drinking ever interfered with your job? Have you ever been told that you drink too much? Do you sneak drinking? When you drink, can you stop when you want to stop? And that's what you have to do. You have to take your own inventory. No one else is supposed to take it for you. And you can decide for yourself whether there's a reason you need to address this.
I can't speak to alcoholics or people out there who are struggling. What I can speak to is somebody who has been on the other side of it. I've had friends who went to Al-Anon, which is the supporters of and friends and family of people who are in recovery or hoping to be in recovery. If you think just loving someone from the sidelines is enough, it usually isn't. It's usually a form of enabling because, at least from my personal experience, people see that as they're okay with this because otherwise they would say something. Loving somebody is helping them get to that point where they're willing to take that inventory. If you're talking about taking the focus off of you, that's what that is. It is, I will take the consequences of this person hating me if it means that they might have that small chance of getting better. So silence is enabling as well. Show love. It's not as simple as making sure somebody has a smile on their face.
When I talk about a few years back how I just looked in the mirror and I just didn't like that guy, that's where it has to start. Which seems like a simple-ass question, but do I genuinely love myself? And if you can answer that question genuinely, I think that's a great start towards whatever type of recovery that you need.
I just think it takes a lot of courage, and I think it's important that we talk about it. And it's not just about drugs and alcohol. It's about anything, trying to just run away from reality.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. It really is important that people understand that there's all sorts of people who are in recovery and are similar to their situations, that we're in it together, and we are about the recovery that means we can love ourselves more, that we can be a part of a support network that is important to us. And, the other thing, and quickly about being willing to talk about being an alcoholic and drug addict, is that then others who might need help can approach me. And I'm not saying necessarily podcast audience, but I'm saying when I talk about it at my work, I've gotten people to say to me, God, my uncle really needs some help. Can you talk to him? So, just thank you, and thank you for the work you do, and I hope we went there enough.
Can you tell the audience real quick about your new company and what it is that you do and share your URL?
Sure. It's Now Communications. We do messaging workshops for nonprofits and mission-driven businesses, video production for videos that will show the world why your company or nonprofit is doing the work they do and how important it is. I do presentation training for people who want some help because, we all are scared of getting up in front of groups. And also some multi-platform writing, freelance writing. So it's Now Communications, and it's luke-now.com.
Go there now.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Luke, for coming on, man. Amazing stuff. Learned so much today, and I truly appreciate you and your time. Once again, our musical artist of the episode is Alomod. You can find him on YouTube at youtube.com/Young Alomod. That's the word young, ALOMOD. You can follow him also on Twitter at IAM_Alomod. Also on Instagram at IAM_ALOMOD Alomod.
We just went there. Now you can go to Instagram at the Going There Podcast, Facebook at Going There Podcast, or email us at goingtherepodcast@gmail.com.
This podcast is made possible by its hosts and Frame One Media in association with Lindsay Baker, Tyler Kubisti, Michael Madgar, Joe Calley, and Bobby Thomas.